Can I do it? Ought I to do it? So the difference in those sentences is two words, but there is a vast gulf in the meaning between them. Can I do it? Ought I to do it? We've come to a pivot point in the book of Genesis. This week, the story of our patriarch Jacob concludes, and having followed him for 3 Torah portions, we might ask, what's the big takeaway? What does this story teach us in the end? More than anything, I think that Jacob's story serves as a cautionary tale about the danger of a society in which the motivating question is, can I do it? Rather than ought I to do it. You see, Jacob grew up surrounded by a society where the only thing that limited people's actions was whether they believed they could get away with them. Jacob saw the men of Gerar try to steal his father's wells. He saw the king try to take his mother Rebekah by force. He saw his father pass off his mother as his sister so that he could save himself. And he saw the way that the people there mistreated him and his kin merely because they were foreigners. And he learned from what he saw. And Jacob was a very good student. He not only adopted this mindset, he mastered it. So the only question he asked before acting was whether he could do it, rather than whether he should do it. Can I get my starving brother to sign over his birthright in exchange for something so little as a bowl of soup? Can I deceive and defraud my blind father into blessing me instead of my brother? He could, and so he did. But a society where anyone does whatever they can isn't a society. It's a melee, where every interaction becomes a cutthroat skirmish. And in such a world, there is not room for trust, for altruism, for kindness, and for the kinds of acts that build bonds between people. So it's no surprise that through behaving this way, Jacob burns every bridge around him. He even has to flee from his own family. What ends up changing him? Well, he's forced to find refuge with his uncle Lavan. And in Lavan's house, you did whatever you could get away with. And even the cheat Jacob can't keep up. Can I break my promise to you? Can I cheat you out of your wages? Can I marry you to one daughter instead of the one you love? Can we use intimacy for manipulation? Well, in Lavan's house they could, and so they did. And Jacob feels the harm that this does. He experiences the way that it strains not just the ties between strangers or acquaintances or even friends, but tears apart the bonds between spouses, siblings, children, and their parents. And he must have wondered, well, if even those relationships can fray in a world that is fashioned by the question, can I? What hope is there for creating a functional community? And Jacob was the bearer of the covenantal promise between Abraham and God. And he realized that in a world of opportunism, there is no room and no place for covenants. So Jacob changed. He began to make covenants between people, extending that divine covenantal promise down to earthly relationships. He starts to act for the sake of others. He restrains himself in order to build trust and mutual responsibility and faith between other people. He starts with Lavan and is able to take his part from his uncle in a way that shows an incredible transformation. Then he receives his new name, Yisrael, Israel, whereupon he reunites with his brother Esau, further demonstrating this new character of his. And then finally this week, we see him condemn his children for the same kinds of deceptive, violent actions that might have made him proud in his youth, but which he now finds that he needs to tell his children have no place for the children of Israel and for a family that bears God's covenantal promise. Whether they learn that lesson is a story for next week. They don't. But we are left with a clear and unequivocal message that a society will break when it is dominated by those who dare to do anything they can get away with rather than those who seek to do what is right. Ethical living is comprised of constraining ourselves for the sake of one another. There are some opportunities we give up because they aren't moral. And to flourish in the long run, a society must be led and then suffused with those who ask, ought I to do it, rather than merely, can I do it? And yet more and more, we're seeing the rise and flourishing of politicians and judges and celebrities more interested in testing the limits of what they can do rather than fighting for what they ought to do. And these opportunists dominate political parties and courtrooms and boardrooms and the news. And the tone they set pervades our society in dangerous ways because this attitude is contagious. If they can get away with it, why can't I? That is an alarmingly catchy question once we all begin to ask it. President Kennedy wrote that we will get the kind of leadership, be it good or bad, that we demand and we deserve. And so we must call out these leaders who ask, can I create legal fictions to avoid paying taxes while public schools and vital infrastructure erode around me? Can I knowingly lie to the public for the benefit of myself or my donors? Can we impose our religious beliefs on others through judicial opinion? Can we make bribery legal? Can we redraw maps to give our supporters more representation than our opponents? Can we lay off our workforces, cut their benefits, their pensions, break their unions while taking million-dollar bonuses? Can we purchase politicians so that our businesses secure more rights than people? Can I bandy with racists and anti-Semites in order to whip up my base? The answer has been they can. And so they do. They are like the wicked nation in this week's Haftorah who says, in all of my labors, they cannot find a sin that is a crime. As though a sin is less sinful if it is legally done. This opportunism we see going around us today, it may be described as good business, but it is terrible behavior. And it may build up wealth, but it tears down the bonds that bind us. It may entrench power, but it saps the foundations of our covenant, of our democracy. The world at times seems unrecognizable even from 10 years ago. What people dare do is shocking. They act with impunity. And some of it is beyond our control. But how we act, what behavior we tolerate, and who we elevate, those things are in our hands. And so we say enough. Enough of cruelty and fraud and of tricksters. No more Jacobs. No more Lavans. We wish to make these years through which we've lived an aberration, a similar kind of cautionary tale. And we wish to renew our devotion to America's covenantal promise that was so beautifully captured by one president who said, they came here, the exile and the stranger, and they made a covenant with this land, conceived in justice, written in liberty, bound in union. It was meant one day to inspire the hopes of us all, and it binds us still. If we keep its terms, he said, we shall flourish. The choice is before us in ways it has not been for generations. To flounder in selfishness or to flourish in covenant. And the children of Israel, we stand ever ready to labor for the beneficent beauty of covenant.